Hare Srinivasa. We will do a short prayer to start with. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Acharyah Pavanosmakam Acharyani cha Bharati Devo Narayana Shishah Devi Mangala Devata Pujyaya Raghavendraya Satyadharmarataya cha Bhajatam Kalpavrukshaya Namatam Kamadheravi. Hare Srinivasa to you all. Welcome back to the Pravachana series Madhwacharya from the Gnanakalpavruksha wing of the New England Sri Raghavendra Swami Brindavana in Boston. Many of you have attended the earlier segment from Sri Sunder Madakshira on life and works of Srimad Madhwacharya and his Shishya Parampara. This program started on the auspicious Madhvanavami day and went on until Ramanavami as a weekly series. These were very enlightening sessions from Sundar, which left the audience spellbound and yearning for more. In the same vein, we want to continue from today onwards. We have a series of pravachanas to cover the Dasa Sahitya, which essentially stemmed from the key tenets of Dvaitha philosophy, incorporating elements of both Gnana and Bhakti. And this encompasses the contributions of several saints, scholars, and poets. This series is expected to go on for about 4 to 5 sessions, and it will be on a monthly cadence. So today's session would be on Introduction to Dasa Sahitya and on the life and works of Sri Purandara Dasaru. And it is no coincidence that on this Father's Day, we are getting to hear about the father of Carnatic music, or Sangeeta Pitamaha, as he is popularly known, Sri Purandara Dasaru. Now, a brief background to those who are joining us today for the first time, and a refresher basically to those who were with us during the last previous series. So, NESRSB Brindavan is a matha dedicated to Sri Raghavendra Swami and is the first US branch of Mantralayam Sri Raghavendra Swami Mutt. It has been established with the blessings of His Holiness Sri Subudhendra Tirtharu, the current pontiff of the Mantralayam Mutt, and is run and maintained by the devotees of Raghavendra Swami in New England and other areas. It was established in 2016 and now has more than 1,000 devotees who attend annual events like Rayar Aradhane, Srinivas Kalyana, and Madhvanavami. Now, a brief introduction to Sri Sunder Madakshira. Sunder Madakshira is a student of Sri Madhwa Philosophy for the last 30 plus years under the tutelage of noted scholars Sri Dr. Vyasanakare Prabhanjanacharya, Dr. Shrikanta Acharya Bayari, and Dr. Prahlada Acharya Joshi. So he has studied the Sarvamoola Granthas under their guidance. He has also written a book on Madhva Shastra titled Life and Works of Sri Vadaraja Tirtha and published by Swadeshi Vadaraja Matha. He is a founder-volunteer of Madhwacharya for the Youth, an organization which has engaged with the youth over the last 15 years to spread awareness about the Dvaitha philosophy. And so far, about 120 workshops have been conducted and attended by over 10,000 participants. In fact, last week he talked about Vishnu Sahasranama, which was attended by over 200 people. He has presented at several forums on the topic of philosophy, including those presided by Sri Vishweshwatirtha of Udupi Pejavar Mutt, Sri Vidyadisha Tirtha of Palimar Mutt, and Sri Vishwavallabha Tirtha, Swamiji of Sode Vadaraja Mutt, amongst others. And like most of us, in his professional life, he is the head of marketing of Adobe in India. He has worked with companies such as Unilever, SAP, Harman Connected Services, Infosys, and Wipro before his current role. He is a noted columnist with the Economic Times, Times of India, Forbes, Business Standard. He teaches MBA students as a passionate hobby at Harvard Business School, Stanford University, Columbia Business School, and the Indian Institute of Management. He has been recognized as the Chief Marketing Officer of the Year by Business One in 2019. So we're very privileged to have you, Sundar Avare, and over to you for your presentation. As I said before, we're all eagerly looking forward to it after the thumping, resounding success of your previous series. Hare Srinivasa. Thank you.
Hare Srinivasa, I think beautiful introduction, Sujit, connecting the day we are commemorating the life and works of Sri Purandara Dasa with the World Father's Day. I think that's an excellent analogy. Yonta pravishya mamavacha mimam prasuktam sanjeevayat tekila shaktaraswadhamna anyam chahasta charana shravanatvagadim pranamo bhagavate purushaya tubhyam. So today we are here on a very, very special occasion when we are starting our very interesting journey into the understanding of something which has been very popular and continues to intrigue everyone in the world, which is the topic of Sri Dasa Sahitya. There are very few people in the world who would not have heard about Sri Purandara Dasa and his great contribution to the music, to the musical world, as well as the philosophical world. So today, let us make an attempt to understand what Haridasa Sahitya is all about. So if we can go to the presentation. So the agenda for the day today is that we will look at how our scriptures are organized. I think we let us start from on a basic topic, because that will give us, that will help us understand the importance of Haridasa Sahitya. And then we will talk a little bit about how it originated and what was the need for Haridasa Sahitya to sort of even come into being, and how it has grown over the centuries to become a powerful movement which thrives even today. Then we'll look at what are the highlights and what is the significance of Sri Haridasa Sahitya. And then we cut over to the second part of what we want to cover today, which is the life and works of the Sangeeta Pitamaha, Sri Purandara Dasaru. So he is the person to whom none other than the learned Sri Vyasarajaru, who can be called a university in his own right, called him Dasarendare Purandara Dasaraya, meaning that if you think about Haridasa, then it is Sri Purandara Dasa. He is the epitome, he is a role model, and he is by definition what a Haridasa should be. So when somebody of the stature of Sri Vyasaraja called him that, what could be the reason, and what made him to be so great? And we look at Sri Haridasa Sahitya, and specifically Sri Purandara Dasa's contribution to the world of Carnatic music and to the world of music in general. There are some things which are extremely unique about the way this contribution has epitomized over 4 centuries. The methodology which has been set at that point in time has stood the test of time, and 400 years it has gone. So what made it so? We look at some of those mysteries, and we look at today, if somebody were to pursue the study of Haridasa Sahitya, how should he do it? What are the resources which are available? I'll be sharing some resources here and some resources later on the mail, so that all of you can have access online to these resources as well. So at the end of today's session, what we would like you to be capable of doing is to understand the significance, because it is something which is extremely unique. As I said, it is a form of philosophy, but not having the burden and the complication and the complexities of having to study everything in Sanskrit. So what is it? How is it special? Is it just emotional rantings of a few people who probably did not understand Sanskrit? What is the purpose and what is the importance of that area? And lastly, learn how we can support this whole Madhva Shastra movement in our own way. So with that, let us jump into the first area of how our scriptures are organized. The basis of Madhva Shastra are the Vedas. That is what we call the Shrutis. The 4 Vedas form the basis of the philosophy. So anything, if it has to be right, or it has to be wrong, or it has to be discussed and debated, it has to trace back to the 4 Vedas. The Vedas, as we probably know, are apaurushaya. That means nobody created it. They exist as airwaves and can be felt by great rishis and great sadhakas who catch that airwave and who have written it in the form of a text for all of us to get some glimpse of what they are. Now, the Vedas, being what they are cryptic and are abstract. It is not easy for one to read a Veda Sukta and then understand the meaning. And sometimes they appear to be in contradiction with each other. Now, you need a larger constitution, or you need a larger preamble or a framework for us to understand what the Vedas are. And for that, Sri Vedavyasa, the person who actually divided the Vedas into 4 parts for ease of study, the same Vedavyasa has written the Brahma Sutras. So the Brahma Sutras are the framework which are used, and to understand what are the different forms of the Vedas, what are different Vedas saying, what is the purport, what is the meaning, and whenever there is a contradiction, how do you actually understand that and understand why it appears like a contradiction, but in reality, it is not a contradiction at all. So all this is compiled in the Brahma Sutras. Now, apart from the Vedas and the framework to govern them, which is the Brahma Sutras, we have the Puranas. We have 18 Puranas. 18 Puranas, Granthas, like Mahabharata, Bhagavata, Padma Purana, Varaha Purana, and so on, which form the storytelling and the philosophical lineage. So again, the Puranas are very much entrenched in the Vedic thought, but they are in the story form, making them more amenable, more and easier to learn because of the story content and the flow that comes in. All of us are very, even if you have not heard all the Puranas, we've definitely heard something about the Ramayana, the Bharata, and of course Bhagavata and other forms. So these 18 Puranas with the Vedas and Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras are very, very voluminous. It is very difficult to imagine a human being able to study all of them. Now, when you look at this, on top of this, or as an aid to understand all of this, are the Sarva Mula Granthas, or the 37 texts that Madhwacharya gave us, which are called the Sarva Mula Grantha. Sarva Mula meaning everything that is there in the spiritual and philosophical world is actually there in the Mula Granthas, or the original Granthas, which are the Vedas, the Puranas, and the Brahma Sutras. So these 37 texts form the basis of what is called the modern day Dvaita philosophy. Now, these texts of Madhwacharya are extremely pithy, very short in sentences. They are very indicative. They are something which quote a lot from the Vedas and the Puranas, and all these are explained in great detail. Now, to understand these pithy texts, one needed a little more explanation and in the form of a debate and a discussion. And that was provided by none other than Sri Jaitirtha. And the Jaitirtha composed what are called the Tika Granthas. So Sri Jaitirtha is called Tika Kripadaru, or someone who composed the Tika Granthas, which are commentaries on Sri Madhwacharya's text. And on top of the Tika Granthas came the Tippani Granthas, that means further commentaries and explanation of Sri Madhwacharya's text and Sri Jaitirtha's text by great scholars such as Sri Trivikrama Panditacharya, who wrote direct commentaries on Sri Madhwacharya's Sarva Mula Granthas, who of course came before Sri Jaitirtha, and of course many other people who came after Sri Jaitirtha, such as Sri Vyasarajaru, Sri Vadirajaru, Raghavendra Swamigalu, the Raghottamaru, and so on and so forth. All of them have written commentaries to ensure that the text, the main purpose and the purport of these texts is very well understood by people. However, what we end up because of all this is a huge amount or quantity of books and granthas which one has to read in one lifetime. So one lifetime certainly is not enough for us to study all these granthas. And there is a barrier in some sense because these granthas are cast in Sanskrit. The language is not understood in the depth that is required. Some of us may know Sanskrit, but for us to understand Sanskrit, which helps us interpret these granthas itself, can be quite a task, and it might take years of studies to understand, to learn the Sanskrit to the level that is required for us to study this. And that is why the fantastic nectar of knowledge is available to us in the form of Sri Haridasa Sahitya. The Sahitya, Haridasa Sahitya is a beautiful representation of this entire Shastra. That is why I've put the arrow Haridasa Sahitya, which it actually crisscrosses the entire length and breadth of our entire scriptural work. And the best part of it, it is available to us today in the Kannada language, a language which many people understand. It is simple to interpret, and very importantly, it builds an emotional connect between us and the Supreme Lord. We will look at some of the other highlights as we go along, but this is the organization of our scriptures. So the key takeaway from this slide is Haridasa Sahitya beautifully epitomizes everything that we see as the form of our Shastras. So there is no part of the Shastras which Haridasa Sahitya has not covered. And we will look at the other forms of Haridasa Sahitya which bring out these things very well. I will also show you some illustrations about how the Shastra is actually, these scriptures are related to Haridasa Sahitya, and how Haridasa Sahitya brings out all this in all its beauty. So that is the organization of our scriptures. So moving to the next topic, which is on the origin of an organization of Haridasa Sahitya. So the moment we think about Haridasa Sahitya, the first thing which comes to our mind is Purandara Dasaru. But the origin of Sri Haridasa Sahitya is not through Purandara Dasaru. It happens many centuries before, when actually, when there is a, so who is the first Haridasa? That's the first question. So the first Haridasa, Haridase, is clearly goddess Lakshmi herself. But after her, it is Sri Vayudeva, the Vayu, who is born as Hanuman, who is the first Haridasa. So as we all know, in the Ramayana, Hanuman crosses the ocean and reaches Lanka, and the whole episode is called the Sundarakanda. And at that time, Ravana asks him, who are you? He captures Hanuman, or Hanuman sort of surrenders to Ravana just to see how Ravana is. And he actually comes face to face with Ravana, and Ravana says, who are you? Anybody could have given any kind of introduction about himself. Hanuman had lot of merits, lot of qualifications, lot of strengths. He does not say any of that. He just says, Dasoham Kausalendrasya. That means I am servant of Rama. So that is the introduction that Hanuman gave. So the real genesis of the Dasa Sahitya in that sense came from the first Dasa, who is none other than Hanuman. And that Hanuman is none other than Madhwacharya. So clearly that spirit of Dasatva comes from none other than Hanuman himself, and it has been propagated since then. Now, coming to Sri Madhwacharya, he composed 37 texts, as I said. One of the texts is called Sri Dvadasha Stotra. All of you, I'm sure, have heard the very famous Prinayamo Vasudevam Devata Mandala Akhanda Mandalam. All these shlokas form part of 12 sets of shlokas, which are called the Dvadasha Stotra, and they are set to a musical meter. So they are all sung in different musical tunes to provide that kind of an attractive presentation of probably some of the greatest philosophical topics. So it is the first attempt in that sense that was made, where complex philosophical aspects have been converted into a tuneful presentation, so that people not only learn them easily, are also able to represent them in a musical format, and everybody can understand and sings along, and slowly singing along these things imbibe those tenets of the philosophy itself in a very easy and seamless manner. When you learn the Dvadasha Stotra, you probably don't even know you have learned it by heart, but you start singing along with them, like the other stotras as well. So the Dvadasha Stotra is believed to be the real inspiration for the people who came subsequently to start the Dasa Sahitya as a movement there. There is also an assumption or there is a belief, and it's a matter of faith, that there existed a text that Madhwacharya had also written about music, about classical music. This finds mention in Sumadhva Vijaya, which is the biography of Sri Madhwacharya, where he actually sang a song and demonstrated how one can sing in a classical way and how philosophy can be represented in a musical way. So in this manner, today, of course, the text does not exist. So we have no way to prove that whether it existed or did not exist. But it is believed that that text existed for for many centuries, and that is what probably inspired Sri Purandara Dasa to set the whole syllabus for the Carnatic music itself. But again, as I said, there is no proof, because in Sri Vyasaraja's Granthamalika Stotra, he mentions 37 texts, which it is a list of all the Granthas. In that, Sri Vyasaraja does not mention this text, but he does not also mention some other texts, probably because they do not form a part of Sarvamoola Grantha. But suffice it to say that that the real inspiration for Dasa Sahitya came from Sri Madhwacharya's Dvadasha Stotra. Now, the first song that was written in the Haridasa Sahitya actually is traced back to Sri Narahari Tirtharu. We learned a little bit about Sri Narahari Tirtharu in some of our earlier sessions. He is a person who actually came in from Orissa, where the language that was being spoken there was a mixture of what is modern day Orissa and Bengali, the language of Bengali. It is a mix of both of them that was spoken apparently in those days. But he chose to speak and compose this in Kannada, this particular song. And that is probably the first Devaranama that has been written by anyone, and it can be found today. So that is the first composition, followed by, we find a song also composed by Sri Jayatirtharu, again in Kannada. So what this basically tells us is, very, very early in end of 13th century, there was an urge and there was an attempt to ensure that whatever is presented as the philosophy is also available in a language other than Sanskrit, so that it reaches the mainstream. It is adapted by people and it is presented in a musical form, set to a classical raga and set to a certain rhythm or tala, to ensure that this gets wider spread adoption. Now you will see that in that entire list that I have sent, it's a little complex. So sorry, the slide has become little asymmetric and it looks a little ugly because of that. But that's with the purpose. Now if you see, I have actually highlighted the name of Sri Sripadarajaru, because really the serious, and from a quantitative perspective and of course the qualitative perspective, it is Sri Sripadaraja who actually got inspired by the Alvars who came in from Tamil Nadu, who had actually recreated a lot of these of Ramanujacharya's texts into Devarnama. So probably he was inspired by the appeal that those songs had with the common man, and he is the one who started composing a number of songs with the Ankita called Rangavithala, and all his Uga Bhogas and Devarnamas are available even today, and they really touch your heart. But that was the first attempt that somebody made to increase that in the quantity, and a movement which was actually started much earlier. Then came Sri Vyasarajaru. He himself is a master composer in the name of, in the Ankita of Sri Krishna. He composed many songs, but very importantly, he was also in some in some way a patron for Sri Purandara Dasaru and Sri Kanaka Dasaru. That's why you find both of them bunched together closer to Sri Vyasarajaru, because from a chronology perspective, they were all contemporaries. So he propagated it and also did something very, 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 very important for Dasa Sahitya, which was the end. Dasa Sahitya is a representation of the scriptures. It is just a Kannada representation of the philosophy. It is not a translation. That's why I deliberately use the word representation, because one of the things that the Haridasas probably understood is that the Sarvamoola Grantha are, most of them are texts which have to be explained as a patha. That means it has to be taught in a classroom with a book in your hand and with a notebook in the other, where somebody is taking down these notes, is able to epitomize it, understand it, question it, debate it, and discuss it. It can't be just translated into Kannada and nobody can make any meaning out of it, because it does not lend itself to that kind of translation. However, what can be done is that it can be represented in a manner that everybody can understand. Right? I hope I'm clear that this was probably the most important aspect of Haridasa Sahitya, that they represented those granthas in a manner that the essence is pulled out and it's presented to us in a very, very simple, pithy, direct, and of course the super attractive style in which they have been presented. So that was Sri Vyasarayuru. Again, his two illustrious disciples and his contemporaries, Sri Vadarajanu and Vijayendra Tirtharu, both of them have composed kritis. Of course, in this clearly, Sri Vadaraja in the pen name or Ankita of Hayavadana, he has composed many songs, Uga Bhogas, Gunda Kriya, etc. We'll see that in a moment, that are very unique to the way he presented it. Vijayendra Tirtharu also has composed a few kritis, but we do not have all of them with us anymore. But some of them have been lucky. We've been lucky enough to find them, and they have been catalogued as well. Then, of course, came Sri Raghavendra Swamiji, who composed two kritis that are available with us today, and that is coming as no surprise, as all of us know. Whenever we look at the picture of Sri Raghavendra Swamiji, it is with a veena. So he was a Vaidika Vainika scholar. Vaidika meaning understanding the Vedas, Vainika meaning someone who can play the veena with a lot of aplomb, as well as with a lot of authority and control. So he was a very noted veena player of his times. After Sri Raghavendra Swamiji came three great Haridasas, Sri Gopala Dasaru, Vijaya Dasaru, and Sri Jagannatha Dasaru. So Purandara Dasaru, along with Gopala Dasaru, Vijaya Dasaru, and Jagannath Dasaru, together form what is called Dasa Chatushtaya. That means a group of four learned Haridasas. All four of them have a very special place because of their unique contribution to superb kritis of Haridasa, as well as Jagannath Dasa's immortal epic Sri Harikatamritasara. So this together is the overall organization of Sri Dasa Sahitya. Now you will all appreciate that this is a very vast topic. Just this can be expanded for more study and research, and I'm sure we will use the subsequent sessions to get into more detail. But at this stage, suffice it to say that the origin and the organization of Haridasa Sahitya happened several thousands of years back, dating back to Ramayana, and then it came forward in every era, and in today's in 13th century we find it starting from none other than Sri Madhwacharya himself, and goes on all the way. Now this slide has very limited space, and there's no way I could have even typed the name of several other hundreds of Haridasas who have made a stellar contribution to this world. I will be sending out a list of these Haridasas to you just for your reference. But there are so many of them who, and even to this day, there are people who go to learned scholars and Swamijis and take the Ankita. That means somebody has to give them the pen name by which they can compose the kritis all by themselves. So that stream which got started in the 13th century continues even today without a break. There has never been a time when Haridasas have not played a very important role in the composition and representation of our philosophy. So that is the origin and organization of the Haridasa Sahitya. Now there are different types that are available, and I wouldn't want to go through each one of them now, but we will talk about it when there is a context. There are several ways, several methods. Kirtanas or Padagalu are the most common. Whatever we hear as songs that are of Haridasa or Purandara Dasa, of anybody, they are all songs. They are kirtanas. The other one is Suladi. That's a group. That's a group of verses together. It's called Suladi. It is typically on one topic or praying to one deity. So Dhanvantari Suladi, Durga Suladi, Narsimha Suladi, and so on. All these Suladis are again meant to be prayers. Then Uga Bhoga. Uga Bhoga is a short verse of anywhere between 2. It can even be 2 and it can go all the way up to 12 lines. But it's a very pithy presentation of music in the musical form. Typically in a classical concert or in a Dasa Sahitya Kacheri, this is sung just before a song starts, which gives the essence of that song beautifully. So while the musical greatness of Haridasa Sahitya is all very well known, I think the core of Haridasa Sahitya is the Madhwa philosophy that they are all meant to propagate. So music is important, but Sahitya or the philosophy is even more important. So therefore, the focus was always on that aspect. So there is Uga Bhoga, Vrittanama, Ragale, Shatpadi, Tripadi, Chaupadi, Sangatya, Gundakriya, Dandaka, Shobhane. Shobhane again is very famous, is Lakshmi Shobhane by Sri Vadirajaru, which is sung everywhere even today. And there are 2 other folk forms, which is Lavani and Jogalapada, which are used to sort of adapt to the musical forms which are there in the rural areas, which are very high on beats and so on, but beautiful musical presentations by it themselves. So these are different forms. So all of us are very familiar probably with the Kirtana, Suladi, and Uga Bhoga, but the others are clearly different ways Haridasas have used for these representation. So of course, one can say, of course, a lot of songs, a lot of things have been composed, but which is that one place where I can go and get a real understanding of Haridasa Sahitya without batting an eyelid? One can say that superb Shastra Grantha, which is none other than Sri Harikatamritasara, which is by Sri Jagannath Dasaru, which is, I think, one of the best presentation or representation of Madhwa philosophy. I dare say it is one of the best encyclopedic work that covers all aspects of our Shastras most comprehensively. Sometimes one Grantha cannot cover everything, or so we think. But Sri Harikatamritasara stands out as a sharp exception to that, where everything that we need to know as sadhakas, as people who are praying to God, be it philosophy, be it the stories in our scriptures, be it the essence that we have to get from those stories, be it the Upanishads, be it the Vedas, he has magnificently sort of combined all these aspects and presented it in a form that one can commit very easily to memory and recite it over and over again, to ensure that these philosophical concepts are not just heard about or just understood at a peripheral level, but are very, very internalized. Today, you will see it's very common for people to quote from Harikatamritasara. Why? Because it's in Kannada language. It is something that people understand in a broad way, and also the fact that with the full recognition that Harikatamritasara is really the magnum opus of Haridasa Sahitya. So we will talk more about Harikatamritasara and Jagannath Dasaru in some of our later sessions, which are completely devoted to Jagannath Dasaru and Harikatamritasara itself. So these are the different types of that. So what is the significance of Haridasa Sahitya? One can turn around and say, look, I think it is nothing but representation in Kannada. They just written it in Kannada. So why should we be so excited, and what is so great about it? The fact is, Haridasa Sahitya is very, very unique because it is number one, it comes with a unique culmination of great music combined with superb and very attractive literature, and which has got the philosophy at its base. There are other musical forms. Some compositions by other composers are great in musical value, but they may not convey the philosophical aspects, especially the tougher ones, as effectively as as the Haridasa Sahitya actually says. Similarly, look at literature. Again, the greatness and the beauty of the Kannada language, I think, has come out very well in the form of Haridasa Sahitya. There was a belief till even recently that one cannot compose songs or musical forms in Kannada. That is why you will see a lot of them have actually composed in the language Telugu, which actually lends itself to poetry very well. But it is not to say that Kannada cannot, and that was demonstrated aptly by Purandara Dasaru and others when they composed these songs, which are great in musical content, but also do a great job in bringing out the beauty of the Kannada language as well as the philosophy that is underlined. That's why I always highlight the word philosophy, because that is really the highlight of Haridasa Sahitya. Now, if you look at I showed you the chronology, right? If you see, the Haridasa Sahitya was not started by Haridasas. They were started by great scholars and pontiffs and Swamijis, Pitadipati. Because why this is significant from our point of view is, these people who composed great Haridasa songs were also people who had composed great Vyasa Sahitya Granthas as well. That means those texts which are written in Sanskrit. So there are people who are extremely authorized, and it's from a very authentic source that Haridasa Sahitya actually emerges. So that's an important aspect that we need to bear in mind. And of course, the highlight is that it is ease and understanding in the language, Kannada. Some of them are in Tulu, but Kannada and Tulu are the two languages that have been used. Majority of them, of course, are in Kannada. So that is something that is made available to people in a language that they can understand very easily. The other aspect was, whenever we looked at a traditional school or a Vidyapitha, where traditional knowledge was being given to people, it was something that was restricted to a certain university. So, or a Gurukula, people had to go somewhere, students had to stay for many years and understand the philosophy, and then sort of take it back with them and propagate it to others, again in the form of a Gurukula. So what the challenge with this model was that the common man never had access to that, right? But philosophy is something that everybody should have access to. That is the belief of Madhva philosophy. So that is why the concept of a mobile university probably in that sense came, because Haridasas would be people who had great scholars who were their teachers. Like, for example, Purandara Dasa's guru was Sri Vyasarajaru. He would learn from Sri Vyasarajaru every day and then go on the streets of Hampi and other cities singing those learnings in the form of a song, and convert that into a philosophical lesson for everybody. We learned the lesson, Sriman Madhvamate Hari Parataraha. That's one of the shlokas written by Sri Vyasaraja, where he says that Sri Hari Parataraha. That means he is someone who is supreme, who is unique. Paraha meaning different from everything else that we know. So what did Purandara Dasaru do? He would go every day, and he saw somebody beating on the drum, Nagari, as they used to call. So he said, Shripati Purandara Vithalane Paranendu Hodi Nagari Mele Kaya. Nagari, meaning that drum which is beaten to make an announcement. So he said, beat the drum and tell everybody, Shripati Purandara Vithalane Paranendu. Again, he has used the same word. So therefore, these were used to take the complex philosophical concepts to everybody's doorstep. So it was something that was available to people at their doorstep. So they would go street to street, lane by lane, by lane by lane, by lane, in order to reach their target audience. So that was the first attempt, maybe, where the concept of mobile university can be found. Now, the other thing is, Madhwacharya's philosophy says something which is very unique, which is experience is the final proof, he says. Nacha anubhava virodhe agamartham tu pramanyam. He says that whenever you hear a philosophical topic, are you able to experience it in some way? Are you able to experience it at least at an intellectual level and at an emotional level, if possible, for you to accept it? If not, you are under no obligation whatsoever to accept a particular topic. So that is the emphasis that he placed on experience, and that has been beautifully carried in the form of Haridasa Sahitya, because the Haridasas ensured that everybody gets that experience in them. So Sri Purandara Dasa says, Anubhavada adigeyu madi, anubhaviralla adakke kodi. Meaning that whenever Anubhavada aduge means cook with that experience. And all you people who have had that experience, you please sit and have that food. That means the Shastra Dhyana, or the study of scriptures, is not something that we just read and forget, but are we able to experience? If you are not able to experience, then our learning will be very, very superficial. So if you read the Haridasa Sahitya, it comes straight into your heart. It goes into your brain. First, it goes into your ears because it's very musical. From there, it goes to the brain, which processes it beautifully because it's in a musical form and it's very light. And it goes straight into your heart, and you get that experience like that. So this is the beauty of Sri Haridasa Sahitya. Now, let me give you certain examples of how the Sarvamula Granthas, or whatever we have learned in as shlokas or Sanskrit form, how they have been adapted into Haridasa Sahitya. I put 3 examples, and I've got one more which I will share with you. So the Dvadasha Stotra, for example, says, Santatam Chintaye Nantam Antakale Visheshataha. That means you have to keep remembering God, but Antakale, that means just before you die. That is the moment then you should be thinking about God even more. Antakale Visheshataha. So this is a concept that one should always be remembering God, but especially at the time when somebody is on his deathbed, he should definitely remember God so that he gets salvation. That is the message that Dvadasha Stotra says. Same thing has been beautifully adapted by Purandara Dasaru in the very famous Devarnama called Narayana Ninna Namada Smaranaya Saramritavu Yenna Naligege Barali. It's a very famous song sung by almost all the prominent musicians in the raga, typically in Shuddha Dhanyasi. And look at the way it has been adapted. Santata Hari Ninna Sasirada Namava Antarangadalli Irisi Antyakaladalli Chintiso Hage. So there are a few other lines which I have omitted. But what if you look at that Santatam Chintayenantam Antakale Visheshataha, beautifully adapted with the same words. Santata Hari Ninna Sasirava Namama, means 1,000 names. That means Vishnu Sahasranama. Sasirava Namama Antarangadalli Irisi. That means you have to internalize that. And then Antyakaladalli Chintiso Hage. So he is praying God that I have been reciting your name all my life, but when I'm about to die, when I'm on my deathbed, please ensure that I get the memory of those songs. So Antyakaladalli Chintiso Hage, 1-to-1, beautifully presented. Again, there is a beautiful definition of bhakti. We have seen it in our earlier sessions as well. So it says Mahatma Gnana Purvastu, there is a big list, and finally says Bhakti Riti Proktaha. There is a definition of bhakti, which says you have to know the greatness of the person towards whom you are having bhakti. Only then it will be called bhakti, otherwise it is blind belief. It has been beautifully converted. Siri Nilayana Gunagala Aritu Bhajisugude Phalavidu Baldudake. A very famous set of lines, Phalavidu Baldudake, written by Govinda Vadayaru, and this fine. So again, I'm trying to bring out how when you're reading a Devarnama or studying a Devarnama or singing a Devarnama, you need to know that it has a one-on-one relationship with a philosophical concept. I'm bringing out the ones which are very, very obvious. 3 lines. One from Sri Nyayasudha of Jaitirtharu. It says, Anuvyakhana Nirnaye Chanchari Kate Me Manaha. It says that I'm when I'm writing the Srimad Nyayasudha, Anuvyakhana, which is the original text written by Madhwacharya, my mind keeps going over and over. Chanchari Kati. That means it feels like going back again and again. Like a bee goes back to the same flower from where it has sucked the nectar. It goes not just once, Chanchari Kati. That means it keeps going again and again. So Sri Appannacharya uses the same analogy in his Raghavendra Mangalashaka, where he says, Srimad Rama Padaraminda Madhupaha, meaning again the bee. So it is adapted and beautifully adapted by Sri Gopala Dasa when he composes a song on again Sri Raghavendra Swami. He says, Sri Raghurama Sri Raghuram Padambuja Bringa. Again, that means Sri Raghavendra Swamiji is such that he keeps going back to the feet of Sri Rama, because Rama's feet are like the lotus, like the flower, and Sri Raghavendra Swamiji is like the bee. It keeps going and falling at that feet, and over again with lot of interest and with lot of commitment. So that is the structure of Haridasa Sahitya. So I wanted to give glimpses, another very clear glimpse that one can see. We've all heard the Devarnama by Purandara Dasaru, which says, Hanuma Namma Tayi Tande, Bhima Namma Bandhu Balaga, Ananda Tirthare Namma Gati Gotra Vaya. He has said this. So which brings out beautifully the all the three avatars of Sri Vayu, and how that Sri Vayu is none other than our father, our mother, and everything to us. Same thing is said in Sri Vayu Stuti as Matar me, Matarishwan, Pitaratuluguro, Bhratarishtapta Bandho, Swamin Sarvantaratman, Ajara Jaraitar Jannamrityamanam, Govinde Dehi Bhaktim, Bhavati Bhagavan, Urjitam, Nirnimittam, Nirvyajam, Nishchalam, Sadgunagana Bretim, Shashwati Masudeva. Here he says, Hanumanamma Tayi Tande, Bhimanamma Bandhu Balaga, Ananda Tirtharanamma Gati Gotravaya. And here it is said, who is Vayu? Matar me, that means mother. Matarishwan means Vayu Deva. He is none other than my mother. Pitaha, Atula Guru, Prataha, Ishtapta Bandho, Swamin Sarvantaratman. So such concepts are clearly, you can match both of them, saying that the origin of Haridasa Sahitya comes from the great tenets of Vyasa Sahitya. So I think I would request all of you that going forward, whenever you are reciting a shloka, try and see whether it actually finds a reflection in a work of Haridasa Sahitya, and the work in Haridasa Sahitya, does it find a reflection in the Vyasa Sahitya. Of course, the place where absolutely it's a no-brainer is Harikatamritasara, where it is very, very evident how these how the tenets that are mentioned in Haridasa Sahitya in Harikatamritasara actually correspond to a philosophical aspect. There it's very obvious, but in other places as well, you can do this, and then the perspective that you will look at Haridasa Sahitya will be very different. So that is what I wanted to talk about in the significance of Haridasa Sahitya. In the meantime, please do post your questions that we may take at the end of the session that you might have. So we'll move into the second part of what we wanted to cover. Maybe for the next 15 to 20 minutes, we'll speak and then we'll take some questions. So whenever we think about Haridasa Sahitya, as I said, we get the picture of Sri Purandara Dasa, and rightfully so in many ways, because after he came into the world of Haridasa Sahitya, the volume and the appeal of Haridasa Sahitya went and multiplied by several thousand folds. And why that is the case is something that we will see. But we will first let us look at a little bit about two interesting stories that sort of epitomize his life. All of us have heard story about Sri Purandara Dasa. So he was called Navakoti Narayana, a person who was, of course, he had studied the scriptures, but not with any great interest and conviction. He was a Chinnavaru. Chinnavaru means goldsmiths, people who essentially made jewels out of precious metals, predominantly gold, and he was a jeweler. And there were people of that who belonged to the Brahmin community, people who were scholars at that time, but for reasons mainly to do with their occupation and the fact that they had to earn a livelihood, they actually had taken to other forms of other vocations as well. So he was a goldsmith, somebody who was known for his mean-mindedness and his being a very miserly person. So would never give anything to anybody. And there was one life-changing incident which happened in his life. Absolutely unbelievable. And that completely changed not only his perspective, but has great lessons for all of us. So one day, a Brahmin came to his shop and along with his young son and told Sri Purandara Dasaru, who was earlier called Navakoti Narayana, because of the wealth that he had, 9 crores of of wealth he had. So you can imagine how much that would be in today's currency. He came to him and he said that I have to perform the Upanayanam, or the thread ceremony of my child, and I don't have money. So if you can please give me some money, or a rich person, it will be of great help to me. So Navakoti Narayana, being a very miserly person, did not, of course, want to refuse him, but did not want to give him anything of any value either. So he gave him some coins, which were actually coins which had got distorted and were almost spurious, so nobody would accept it. But just as a custom, he just gave it to him and told him, "This is all I can give you." Now, that Brahmin was no ordinary Brahmin. He was none other than Lord Krishna, who had come in that form. And he took those coins and went straight to Sri Purandara Dasa's house. And his wife, Saraswati Bai, was someone who was an extremely pious lady, a person very philosophical and spiritual at heart. And she was aware of the miserly nature of her husband. And this Brahmin went and requested her, "Can you please give me some money for the Upanayanam?" So immediately his wife said, "Yes, I can give you, but the fact is that nothing in this house belongs to me, and everything belongs to my husband, and I need his permission." And heart of heart, she knew that he's not going to permit her. So what she did was that she looked around and thought, "What is that one thing that belongs to me?" And she realized that her nose ring, the golden jewel that women wear on the nose, is something that belonged to her, because that had come to her from her father during the wedding, and therefore she could give that to him. So she immediately took it out and gave it to the Brahmin. Now the Brahmin was very happy, thanked her, and went straight to Sri Purandara Dasa himself, or Navakoti Narayana, and told him that, "Look, I have, you did not give me money, but here is something I have got. I would like to sell this jewel." And the moment Narayana saw that, he realized that actually belonged to his wife, because it had a unique design. And he said, "Okay, I need to value this. So please come tomorrow and I will give you the money. I will value this and I'll keep that much money ready and you can take it." And so the Brahmin left, and then Narayana then went home and checked with his wife, "What happened? You're not wearing the nose ring. Where is the nose ring?" And she says that, "Look, I think I have kept it inside the house." And she says, "Okay, if that's the case, I would like to see it." Immediately she comes to know that her husband has come to know that she has given the nose ring. And being a very miserly person, he did not want to give away any of his money. So she ran inside the god's room, locked the door, and attempted to kill herself. And just when she was about to kill herself, she found the nose ring that she had actually given to the Brahmin right in front of the place where the god was. God himself had kept that nose ring over there. She picked up that nose ring and gave it to Sri Narayana and asked him to check it out. So immediately Narayana rushed back to his shop to see whether that ring which he had kept it in his shop was still there. And to his shock and dismay and surprise, he finds that nose ring is not there anymore. Something that he had kept with his own hands, locked the shop. How could that nose ring have probably gone back to his wife? In a moment, he realized that it was none other than Panduranga of Pandharapura, who had come in that form of a Brahmin to give him, to test him, and to give him this life-changing lesson. That very moment, he decided that whatever he was doing was wrong, and he should take the path of being a Haridasa. So overnight, in a matter of few minutes and hours, his life trajectory completely changed. He by that time had 4 sons, and it is said that he also had a daughter who had been married off by then. So He, along with his wife, left and sacrificed their entire wealth and started moving and leading the life of a Haridasa. And they went, the story so therefore goes on. He had developed so much of vairagya or detachment towards worldly matters that he did not even bother to take all the wealth that he had and donate it amongst people. He just said, whatever wealth I have is now donated to God, and let God do whatever he wants with it because it's his money. He left the house and started walking on the street. And his wife, of course, was very supportive because she was a very, very spiritually enlightened person much before Sri Purandara Dasa himself. So he went there all the way seeking the blessings of Sri Vyasarajaru. Vyasarajaru was in Hampi. He had by then become the Rajaguru of Krishnadevaraya and had founded the Vishwapavana Matha and so on. A very established great teacher, Purandara Dasara went and talked to him and immediately got his Ankita called Sri Purandara Vithala. It's a signature saying that it was done by him, but it's all offered at the feet of Purandara Vithala. And from then on, all the songs that he composed bear the pen name and the signature Purandara Vithala. So he went to the probably one of the best scholars and teachers of that time, Sri Vyasaraja himself, and started his spiritual and scriptural studies further under his tutelage. At that time, if you go back to that slide which was there, you will see that Sri Vyasaraja, Sri Vyadaraja, Sri Vijayendra Tirtharu, and Purandara Dasa and Kanaka Dasaru, about whom we will know more in the next session of our of the series, are people who all stayed together. So it is one of the golden eras of Madhva philosophy itself. And from then on, Purandara Dasa was 40 years of age. All that he started composing was after that, and he had lived around 85 years. So in 45 years, how many kritis or how many songs did he compose? He composed a staggering 4,75,000 compositions. 4,75,000 compositions in such a short period of time, which meant if you calculate, it comes to almost 10 kritis every single day. So that was the prolific composition that he made, again of all types, Uga Bhoga, Suladis, and mainly the Kirtanas, which are all meant to give those superb spiritual lessons to the people. That is a story of supreme awakening. There is also a story of supreme detachment. And this will be the second story about Sri Purandara Dasaru. So once what had happened in the city of Hampi, Sri Vyasaraja would always talk about Purandara Dasa to the Krishnadevaraya, the emperor, and say that Sri Purandara Dasaru is a picture of detachment. He has composed a song. Imagine, Sri Vyasaraja has composed a song on Sri Purandara Dasaru saying Dasarindare Purandara Dasaraya. To get that kind of a recognition from Sri Vyasaraja is unbelievable, something that is unprecedented. So he got it, and he said, so Krishnadevaraja was a little skeptical. He thought that probably Sri Vyasaraja is exaggerating a little bit when it comes to Purandara Dasa's achievement. So one day what he did was that he changed his clothes, garbed it under some other wearing very ordinary clothes. He went to that place where Sri Purandara Dasa would come singing the songs on the street, asking for food, rice and alms, so that was called Bhiksha. So he would come every day. But the real purpose Purandara Dasaru was actually traveling was to see that the songs that he sang actually carried those philosophical lessons to everybody's doorstep. As I said, it was a mobile university. But Krishnadevaraja wanted to test him. So what he did was every day he would pick up a fistful of very, very precious gems and put it in that pot that Purandara Dasa would be carrying, where he would collect all this rice and other food ingredients. And so Purandara Dasa came and he went forward. And next day again, Krishnadevaraya said, look, every day I think he's supposed to go to different places. Let me see if he comes here. So again Sri Purandara Dasa came here. And so he said, oh, this person has come here. I think he probably needs more money. So he took another fist of precious gems and put it there. And this continued for a few days. And then Krishna Devaraja told Sri Vyasaraja, see, you were saying that Purandara Dasa was a very detached person. But every day, why does he come here and to get these precious gems? I think he has got some aspirations about his wealth. Now, Vyasaraja all knew, of course, he knew who Purandara Dasa was and said that he had no such intentions because he was a very, very rich person. He had forsaken all this. Why would he come and ask, the king for one fistful when he had so many of his own? So he knew this background. But to prove to Krishna Devaraja, he says, okay, let us do one thing. Why don't we go and check in Sri Purandara Dasa's house? What is he doing with those gems? So Sri Krishna Devaraja and Vyasaraja both go to Purandara Dasa's house. And Sri Purandara Dasa is not at home. He has gone out. And his wife receives both of them. She's very happy that the emperor has come to their house along with Sri Vyasaraja. And then Vyasaraja asks her, how are you? How are you people doing? I hope everything is fine with you. To which she gets a shocking answer. An answer which is probably not shocking to Vyasaraja, but to Krishna Devaraya. She says every day, earlier when Sri Purandara Dasa used to go on the street, people used to put some, very nice rice and pulses so that we could eat. But of late, somebody has been adding a lot of stones into the food. So every day we spend a lot of time sorting out the rice and other things, edible, ingredients along with from the stones that they have put inside. So it has become an additional task for us. And Sri Vyasaraja was not to leave it at that. He says, what are you doing with those stones? She says, we have thrown it over at our backyard. And they actually find that everything is there in a heap. All these precious gems, which could have fetched a lot of money to Sri Purandara Dasa, were thrown behind the house as stones. So immediately Krishna Devaraya understands the greatness of Sri Purandara Dasa. It was not that Purandara Dasa or his wife did not see those stones. They understood that they were very, very precious stones because he is a jeweler who can understand the value of that better than him. But to their eyes, which had a spiritual, glaze in front of them, they could not see them anything other than stones. So all these worldly matters worldly aspects had become, things of which were non-entities and things of no value in front of their eyes. That was the greatness of Sri Purandara Dasa. So much so that all the compositions of Sri Purandara Dasa, Sri Vyasaraja called it Purandaropanishad, giving it the same status as the Upanishads, saying that those aspects which are mentioned in our Upanishads are beautifully captured by Sri Purandara Dasa himself. So it deserves a separate status as a Purandara Upanishad. Just again underlying the spiritual and the philosophical content of Sri Haridasa Sahitya. Now, I would have liked to take one more story, but I think we are getting a little running behind time. So I'll make it short. The impact of Sri to Purandara Dasa Kritis on people's emotions. Several centuries after Purandara Dasa, there was a person, very great saint called Sri Vishnu Tirtha. Again, Sri Vishnu Tirtha is also called Adavi Swami. I have put it in brackets because there are other pontiffs also by the name Vishnu Tirtha. Sri Madhwacharya's younger brother in his Purvashrama, his name is also Vishnu Tirtha. Vijayendra Tirtha's name before he went into the current mutt was also Sri Vishnu Tirtha. So this person is different. He's called Adavi Swami Guru because he liked to spend most of his life in a forest in meditation. So the story about Sri Vishnu Tirtha is as follows. He was a grihastha, that means a person, the family man. He was once sitting, he had had his lunch and he was sitting on the bed and his wife was pressing his legs as a way of service. And at that moment, there was a person who was singing one of Purandara Dasa's songs. Remember, Purandara Dasa had already had ended his avatara, so he was not available, but the songs had caught on by then, and everybody was singing it in the streets of different cities. So he was singing that, And he sang a song which said, Mancha Baradu, Madadi Baralu, Kanchu Kannadi Baradu, which meant that when your end comes and when you have to forsake this world, Mancha Baradu, that means bed, you're caught, symbolic of the worldly pleasures, will not come along with you. Madadi Baradu, that means your wife will not come along with you. Kanchu Kannadi Baradu, all Kanchu, Kannadi meaning the mirror, Kanchu meaning the bronze, that means all worldly wealth will not come back with you. ಮುಂಚೆ ಮಾಡಿರೋ ಧರ್ಮವ ನಮ್ಮ ಗೋವಿಂದ ನಮ್ಮ ಗೋವಿಂದ ನಮ್ಮ ಗೋವಿಂದ ನಾರಾಯಣ. This only thing that's going to come is God's grace with you. So no matter what you do and how comfortable you are, the worldly wealth will not come along with you. He just heard that song once and in an instant woke up and went out of the house, never to come back. He went out and took the life of a pontiff, so much so that he became an epitome or symbol of sacrifice and vairagya. Even to this day, his Bhagavata Sarodhara, the great Grantha that he has written, is a superb explanation of the Bhagavata Grantha itself. And he was never attached to a matha, that means he was never a Pitadipati, but he was a Bidi Sannyasi. That means somebody who would not be affiliated to one matha, but again a scholar who would still be propagating the Madhva philosophy. Even to this day, as Vrindavana stands, and the story is mainly to tell us the beautiful impact and the profound impact of Sri Purandara Dasa's kritis. So here I've shown you two pictures of Sri Purandara Mantapa, the place where Purandara Dasa is supposed to be seated and to do his meditation and also teach music to his disciples. And that is the famous Sri Krishna idol in the Aprameya Swami temple, which is in Daddamallur, which is between Bangalore and Mysore. Many of you, I'm sure, have seen it. Why I've shown the idol is that is the place where he is supposed to have composed the very famous song Jagadodharana Adisidale Yashode. That song was composed in that place. It stands as a testimony even today. Beautiful idol of Sri Krishna with the butter in his hand, and it is on the side temple of Sri Aprameya Swami temple in Doddamallur. So if you get a chance, please visit that place, and if you have already visited, you can visit once more. And the whole song of Jagadodharana Adisidare Yashode has been inscribed next to the temple. So these are some of the events and highlights of Sri Purandara Dasaru. Of course, his life is an example for all of us from the point of view of Vairagya and the greatness of the spiritual knowledge that we can get. Somebody who made it easy for all of us to understand philosophy through his great creations. And not only that, that inspired a series of Haridasas. And of course, we move to the last slide of the day, that is Sri Purandara Dasa's contribution to music. I think he is called Sangita Pitamaha, as we all know, but not without a reason. If you look at a university, let us say there are some people who are teaching certain subjects, and there are some people who are responsible for setting the syllabus. Who needs to have the higher caliber and higher depth of the understanding of the subject? It's clearly the people who set the syllabus. So the entire syllabus on how to teach Carnatic music was actually set by Sri Purandara Dasa. So when a student goes to learn, be it vocal or instrumental, there is a certain syllabus, there is a certain process and a stepwise process that is followed to teach this music. It's not a random collection of the way it has been taught. So that process was set by Sri Purandara Dasa when he said that Maya Madava Gauda will be the raga or the musical form, tune, to which people will be taught, and they will be taught the Sarale Verse, the Janti Verse, that means dual notes and Alankaras, and then the Gitas. So Shri Gananatha Siddhi is the first song that students actually learn when they go to a musical class after they have finished the lessons. Now what is beautiful is this system was actually set in motion 400 years back, and despite the fact that a lot of changes have happened in the world, in India, south of India especially, Now we've got classified into 4. Now we have 5 states. There are different banis, different forms, music, different composers have come, so on and so forth. And yet it is very clear a lot of things have changed, but not has not changed is the basic format in which people learn music across the entire southern state. It is consistent across all the schools of music in South India. There is no change. Even students learning in the United States or any other part of the world, they follow this very, very clearly. Beautiful usage of ragas, beautiful usage of talas, not just Purandara Dasa, but other people. For example, Krishnani Begane Baro is one of the famous kritis, again by Sri Vyasaraja. So all these things show that there was a lot of musical richness which was embedded into these songs, which brought out the direct connection with the philosophical aspects, and above everything else with God Himself, very directly. And the manner in which it has been presented is so beautiful, that only musical forms which are there. Now, if you see, there are many people who are Haridasas. There are other people from other states and other places who have also composed many songs. But Haridasa Sahitya is probably the only format which spans both Hindustani and Carnatic music. Hindustani music, which is predominantly sung in the north of India and which has got a fair amount of Persian influence. Even there are singers who sing Haridasa Sahitya, and of course, Carnatic musicians sing the Haridasa Sahitya. So it's only musical form which transcends the geographical boundaries within India, between north and south of India. No other form is done that way. Very few, if at all. So this is the way it has been presented, and what we have today is something that is there as a Haridasa Sahitya, which one cannot even imagine how Haridasas can get us connected to God. I was just listening to a few songs in the morning, and I was really moved by some of them. The famous Purandara Dasa song. Look at the way he talks to God. He says, "Yanago ane ranga ninago ane." Yanago ninago ibbarigu bhaktarane. That means you owe me a responsibility. I owe you a responsibility. And together we owe the other devotees something. Why? Because if I go wrong, it's up to you to correct me. So he puts the complete onus on God. And of course, take the responsibility, saying that if I do something wrong wantonly, then I'm at fault. So it is almost like a dialogue. And how can you have dialogue with somebody whom you have not seen or you have not met? It's very clear that Purandara Dasa and the other great Dasas, all of them were able to talk to God. It was a dialogue. It was not a monologue. I was reading another beautiful Uga Bhoga by Sripada Raja. He says that look at this. You are being very unfair to me. He challenges God. He says, you are being very unfair to me. When you are my father, God, you are my father, you are my mother. Have you ever seen father and mother calling their children and counting all the bad things that the children have done in public? Never will they do it, but you are doing it. When I come to you, you says you have done so many papa and so many punyas. You have committed so many sins and you've done so many good deeds. You're counting all this. Does any parent do it to their child, that in front of everybody they actually enumerate all their children's wrongdoings? You should cover up for your children, isn't it? Aren't you being unfair to me? He asks God himself. Look at what a beautiful way of presenting how God is our mother and father. Unparalleled presentation, unbelievable way of connecting with God. So if one lives with that word, that whatever I do, if I have that sincere repentance for whatever I've done wrong, then God will accept it. He's not going to curse me, he's not going to punish me for it. But if I do something wrong wantonly, then I have to be prepared for the consequences. To say this, Sripada Raja actually turns the tables on God himself. What a lovely way of presenting a philosophical topic. So it is with these aspects that I wanted to present to you some highlights of Sri Haridasa Sahitya as such, the plan and purpose of that, and talk a little bit about Sri Purandara Dasa's life. As I said, the time is always limited with us, and we have the next 15 minutes. Yeah, it'll be great if we can take some questions on Purandara Dasa. Yeah, so the first question I can say is Purandara Dasa composed 4,75,000. Currently, we have 2,000 available. Why did we lose track of huge list? So we should have preserved it, and it's a tragedy for us that we have not been able to preserve it. We also have to remember that at the time of a lot of lawlessness in India, a lot of attacks coming from the Mughal kings that were happening at that time, and at the same time followed by the Britishers. So a lot of the entire Hampi, which is where all these kritis got composed in majority, are the ones which, as we know today, Hampi has been, it's like a ghost town because the whole place was brought down in an invasion. So a lot of these things were not captured, and whatever was captured got lost because of the invasion. So clearly, I think not recording it immediately and preserving it, and second thing, the onslaught from the Mughals as well as Britishers took away a lot of our scriptural works. It's a tragedy. Yes, I can see the pain. Sri Jaisima is saying that out of 4,75,000, we have only 2,000. Actually, we have only about 1,000 which are available. So it is a tragedy. It has been lost. And at least what we should do is that whatever we have today, I think it is a lot of attempt has been made to ensure that these are published and these are all saved for our future generations. At the same time, I must also say that slowly but steadily, we are discovering more kritis which have come from word of mouth. They are getting captured every year. I can say that we are finding 25 to 30 new songs that have been coming along because of some old publications that people did not have access to. That is getting added to the mainstream books that are there for people to learn. So yes, we have lost a lot. And what is the main reason for Haridasa Sahitya to be in Kannada was the fact that, if you look at it, Karnataka, the current today Karnataka was one of the largest places where all of them came from. Sri Madhwacharya himself came from Udupi, that again had Tulu as the basic language, but immediately after that, a lot of Madhva Shastra Prasara has happened actually in the upper part of Karnataka, Uttara Karnataka, and there the language which was spoken was Kannada. So that is why you would see that even today the center of gravity in many ways is Kannada. But I think good thing is all these songs and all the sahitya is available today in other languages, getting translated into other languages as well. But typically the language that was used was that of the majority. How will we be able to help the majority of the people who are connected with that philosophy at that time was the focus. So clearly there are attempts like we are having this workshop in English today, which probably was not there in earlier times. A lot of focus on Pravachanas being in Kannada again. So that is what Madhwacharya for the youth is trying to do, which is trying to get the lessons of Madhva philosophy in English as well. Which is the first Devarnama by Narahari Tirthar. If you can send me your email ID or I can send it to Sujit, he can probably share it with all of you. That is available. It is there. It's a long 4-paragraph song. With the rest of the word, do we have a list of which all topics he has composed the Kirtanas? Yes. So we don't have it topically divided, but on the main topic being which god or which form of god he has done, that is available. So if you go to Dr. Allumalige Paratha Sarthi, a very renowned scholar, and I'm giving that list after this about how you should study Madhva or the Dasa Sahitya. That book is available with 4,500 compositions of different Haridasas. In that, he is classified by the name of the god, the form of god which they have prayed to. So that list is available. So predominantly his compositions have to do with on gods and prayer to God himself. Some on other gods like Lakshmi, the very famous. I think even if people don't know Kannada, they don't know anything about Haridasa Sahitya. No Bhagyada Lakshmi Barama, Nammamma, He Saubhagyada Lakshmi Barama. There's nobody in this world who doesn't know that song. So those are songs on Lakshmi Devi, similarly on Vayu Devaru and Bharati Devi and Rudra Devaru, Lord Shiva, and several other gurus of that time. So that list is available. That book is available. That book is available in libraries and bookstalls in India. So that is one thing that is there. How did we get the 4,70,000? It is mentioned 4,75,000 is mentioned in his own kritis, and it is also mentioned in Sri Vijayadasaru's kritis. So what Sri Purandara Dasa had vowed to do was to actually do 5,500,000 kritis. He wanted to compose and offer it on the feet of God. He did 4,75,000 deliberately because he wanted that to be completed by one of his other disciples. It's a common thing in our philosophy. Sri Raghavendra Swamiji was to write on all 18 granthas of Sri Jaitirtharu. He did only for 17 and let his son write the other one. The last one was written by his son, mainly as a form of recognition to another scholar. Similarly, Vyasaraja has written the Chandrika Grantha, Tatparya Chandrika. He has written only certain chapters. The last one was written by somebody who came as his disciple, and he is actually famously known as Shesha Chandrikacharya, that means someone who completed it. So this format exists, and this finds a reference, the number finds a reference in both Sri Purandara Dasa's works as well as Sri Vijayadasaru's work. So we will look at that in Sri Vijayadasaru's story, about which we'll have a separate session, and how this is actually mentioned. But that's a good question about, since we don't have who kept account and how was it at 4,75,000. Purandara Dasa is called Karnataka Sangeeta Pitamaha. Do we consider Narayatirtha Pitamaha? Yes, of course. I mean, there is very clear, as I said, evidence that Narahari Tirtharu was the first person who composed. So absolutely no harm in calling him Prapitamaha. And of course, we can. It's a lineage. It is not something which is centered around one person. But clearly, I think Shripadaraja's was able to scale it up to unprecedented heights. And soon after that was his disciple Sri Vyasarajaru, who saw the impact. I think they all went a lot by impact and representation. So impact is directly proportional to the representation. If something is being told in a certain format and it's not registering in people's mind, there's no point in doing it, right? It's not being understood, it's not being gathered. So you need to represent it. That's why we wonder. Brahmasutra Bhashya was written by Madhwacharya. Why keep on writing books? Every scholar who thought of himself as someone who wants to contribute to Madhwa philosophy will compose a kriti on Brahmasutra Bhashya. Not needed is what we think sometimes. But we also have to go by the concept, the profundity of the concept, the presentation, and how well it is suited the contemporary world. So they've all made attempt to recreate that. So yes, nothing stops us from calling Narahari Tirtharu the Pitamaha. Absolutely, we can do that. So I think these are some of the questions that I could gather. And if there are more, love to take them. Otherwise, back to Sujit.
Thanks a lot, Sundar. I have one more question. You talked about Dasa Chatushtaya. So it's predominantly Purandara Dasaru, then Gopala Dasaru, and Vijay Dasaru, and I think Jagannatha Dasaru. Was Kanaka Dasaru not kind of looped into that count? Is there a reason for that, or is it based on the volume of work, or what was the criterion?
Yes. See, the thing is, Kanaka Dasaru had a certain life before he met Sri Vyasaraja. and he had composed a few kritis even that time. Now, all of them are not in consonance with the Madhwa philosophy, right? So, if you want something to be called an authentic text, then everything that person should have said should be authentic, right? Uh, for example, there is let me give you an example. There is a very famous Uga Bhoga, or this is called Mundige. This is another form. Mundige means puzzle. What a better word we can call it, puzzle. So it is not something that you will understand quickly. It will have some twist to it. It goes like this. It says, "Yarad hakki kutai tanna." This is again in a rural language, right? Deliberately, it has been done like that to misguide people, to confuse you a little more, because that's about the art of a puzzle, right? It should not be evident. So, ಎರಡು ಹಕ್ಕಿ ಕೂತೈತಣ್ಣ, ಒಂದು ಹಕ್ಕಿ ತಿಂತೈತಿ, right? ಇನ್ನೊಂದು so it basically is the two birds. One bird is eating, the other bird is not eating. The one which is eating is becoming weaker and weaker, whereas the one which is not eating is well fed and it is keeping quiet. That's it. There's nothing, no explanation. End of story. How do you interpret it?
Bogi and yogi type of explanation, I think. Yeah.
Nothing but it comes from the Upanishads. It says Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakhaha. Very, very famous line in our Upanishads, which is used by Brahma in Brahma Sutra Bhashya a lot. He said there are two birds. One is Paramatma or Lord himself. The other one is the soul. The Supreme Lord and the soul. The soul keeps on eating. It's all consuming all the time. Not just food, but everything. It's going through its life cycles of birth and death and birth and death. Every time it comes, new life, thinks, okay, the life is good. This life is going to be great. Again, after some time, it gets to know the limitations of this world. Again, it dies. Again, is born again. So maybe next life will be better. But we are going in the same cycle of birth and death, eating and eating and eating and everything. How many times do we eat in a day? How many times we drink in a day? And what is happening because of that? We are actually shrinking. Spiritually, we are shrinking. Right? It's common knowledge, right? People who are yogis, they don't eat anything. They eat once a day. Sannyasis eat only once a day. There is a very in a loose way it is said in Kannada. ಒಂದು ಹೊತ್ತು ಉಣ್ಣುವ ಯೋಗಿ, ಎರಡು ಹೊತ್ತು ಉಣ್ಣುವ ಭೋಗಿ, ಮೂರು ಹೊತ್ತು ಉಣ್ಣುವ ರೋಗಿ, ನಾಲ್ಕು ಹೊತ್ತು ಉಣ್ಣುವ ಎತ್ಕೊಂಡು ಹೋಗಿ. Meaning what? It is about nourishment, right?
Yeah.
So it is a spiritual nourishment which is more important. Unfortunately, the one of the birds is not understanding this. Is going on eating, whereas the other bird, God, is paripurna. He's complete. He neither increases nor decreases. So all of us who feel that, oh my God, if I offer a lot of food to God, maybe he will put on weight. None of that happens. Our Lord Srinivasa is the way he is in Tirupati forever. And look at the amount of food that is offered to him, right? So none of that impacts God, but it's only the soul which goes through that cycle. So if you want something to be authentic, spiritual and philosophical work, everything that person has done should be something that you should be able to pick up and say, okay, what is this corresponding? That was not the case with Sri Dasaru. He had a life-changing experience. We see that in his story, and because of which he changed his style of presentation, and that is why he is probably not counted in the Dasa Chatushtaya. Also, the volume of work, as you rightly mentioned, is also between these four people is enormous. So Vijay Dasar again did not stop at 25,000. He has composed much more. 25,000 was his minimum. Today, actually, the maximum number of kritis available is of Vijay Dasar. But so just on a side note, Sujit, whatever we presented today was a list of certain Dasa Sahityas. There are a lot of others. There are hundreds of others actually. So which are there? Prasanna Venkata Dasaru has done many compositions. Srinivasa Kalyana and several others. Anantadrisharu, so many of them are there, which are again fantastic compositions. Again, my hunch also is the fact that since Narahari Tirtharu, Jaitirtharu had already started, I find it hard to believe that many of their contemporaries did not compose anything in that language, which we probably must have also lost. Even this Kriti of Jaitirtharu was found recently, and because it was appearing in one of his direct texts, therefore it was sort of linked back to him. Like that, Narayana Caesar, of course, was clear. But these were all discoveries of the recent past. So I think as more research happens, more effort is made by universities and great scholars like Dr. Acharya. I think a lot of these things will start coming out even more going forward.
Very good. Thank you. Anyway, I think we've come to the. I think this is an excellent. I mean, I don't have to say that. Each one is bettering the previous one, Sundar. I think this is a great introduction to Dasa Sahitya and tying it to the Madhwa philosophy, the tenets of Madhwa philosophy. And I think I just kind of summarize some of the things that we kind of talked about, key takeaways. There are a lot of them. I'll kind of take some of the more prominent ones. So I think you talked about the Brahma Sutras, Vedas, and Puranas being the basis on which Srimad Madhwacharya composed the Sarvamoola Granthas, 37 of them, on which there was a kind of hierarchy of documentation, basically, right, and explanation, more elaboration coming through Tika Granthas and then Tippani Granthas also. So that's one hierarchy that was one key takeaway for me. And of course, when it came to Haridasa itself, it was a revelation that the thinking was different. Just like you mentioned, I was kind of under the notion that Purandara Dasa started the Haridasa movement. But you started with Goddess Lakshmi, and then of course Hanuman, who said the Dasoham Kausalendrasya, right? So that's a very good foundational thing about Dasa Bhava, even among the gods, not from human beings alone, but even among the deities itself. The Dasa Bhava kind of originates, and of course you're also bringing forth the point that perhaps Dvadasha Stotra, which was kind of an epitome of kind of Sarvamoola Granthas, became the inspiration for Dasa Sahitya as such, right? And with Narahari Tirtharu, who kind of composed the first Devaranama, right? The other more important thing from
Sujita, we're done with the live, right?
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay,
We're done with the live.
Okay, yeah. Anyway, I'll just take this to closure.
Sure.
So maybe with just a short set of. Oh, does it automatically stop, Murali?
No, I have to stop, Sujita. We're done with the live, right?
Yeah, I think we're done. I think I'll probably just have a side discussion. Anyway, thank you all very much. Thank you all very much. I think I think this is a great talk, and I think we'll continue again in a month's time, probably in the third week or so of July, where Sri Sunder will talk about Kanaka Dasaru and Gopala Dasaru as a continuation of the Dasa Sahitya tradition as such. Thank you very much. Hare Srinivasa.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.